Good morning. I have the privilege of presenting Miss Bailey Daves. On the panel with me is, by the way, my name's Miss Martiz, is Miss Miller and Mr. Perea. We can be seated. You may be seated. This year, I've had the privilege of having Bailey help me out with fine arts. We've really conquered that class together, and so it's been an honor. And I'm going to open us in prayer, and then Bailey's going to begin. So, dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for Bailey, Lord. I thank you so much for the ability that we have to think about things and think about the complexity of who you made us to be. And Lord, I just ask that as Bailey talks about living a soul life, Lord, that you calm her nerves, Lord, and that you'll just be with her. You'll be speaking through her, Lord. Spirit, I just ask that the conversations that we get to have, Lord, that they are just rooted in your truth and in your beauty, Lord. Lord, I just pray over Bailey that as she continues to live out this just life, that it's just so full of your glory, Lord, and of your love. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
If we look at the Middle Ages, it is one of the darkest points in time. The Crusades and the Plague were the main events of this time period, and most people were too worried about keeping their families safe and alive to worry about things like creating art or music. But when the plague was ending in Florence, Italy, people began wanting to learn and create again. The birth of the Renaissance was a point when an emphasis was put back on gaining knowledge and learning about people. Some of the most memorable art and philosophy came from this time, and we wouldn't have any of the media we have now without it. But with the more art and media available to us, the more stimulation our minds go through on a daily basis, which causes a general sense of hurry and anxiety in our everyday lives. I believe that we were designed to live a life without a constant sense of hurry, and that we were made to live a slow life. The influence of the Renaissance is undeniable, but in the midst of all of this beauty, it was found that this is the furthest that people as a whole have fallen away from God. With all of the beauty, knowledge, and information around them, people were consuming more and more information, not unlike now. We have so many sources of beauty in the world and so many ways of escaping from our everyday lives that we easily become distracted from what matters most to us. We often devote ourselves fully to what makes us happy, but too much of anything can be harmful. When we're constantly consuming or creating media, it causes our brains to stimulate and produce dopamine, meaning that our minds are working and processing information at a higher level than when we're resting. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter found in the brain that sends signals when we do or feel anything that brings us joy or pleasure. It's necessary for all daily functions, and without a regular amount of it, it can lead to a multitude of issues for our health. Dopamine has also been referred to as an automatic reward system that stimulates our minds. And while we need to stimulate our minds so that we can learn and grow, there are a lot of stimulants now that are incredibly easy to access and aren't always used in a healthy way, which increases that sense of anxiety that's so prevalent in our culture today. For example, when you're scrolling on social media, you experience a dopamine boost, and after a few minutes, your dopamine levels return back to normal. But with the addictive nature of social media, it's easy to keep scrolling and find something else that will pique your interest, and your dopamine levels will spike again. You subconsciously look for another thing to keep spiking it, and as you continue with this pattern for an extended period of time, your brain keeps functioning at a higher and higher level, but it stops being able to regulate itself. It turns into a pattern almost like waves, and at the higher the peak, the further you have to fall. You get a buzz when your dopamine levels are high, but when they begin to drop back down to a resting state, you experience a feeling of boredom so strong it can lead to an internal panic. And when people get bored like this, one of the first things they do is look for another distraction. We so easily get stuck in a vicious cycle, and it seems like the easiest solution is to put our phones away. But they've become almost a necessity in our lives. We use them every day for work, school, and all kinds of things. Our phones now have a part in every aspect of our lives. It would be borderline impossible for us to get rid of or even limit the amount of technology in the modern world, so there has to be a way for us to coexist and thrive with technology in our lives. Technology, and social media especially, are designed to capitalize on being addictive, so it's hard to form a healthy relationship with either. However, there are a lot of short-term ways that we can use to build better habits that can help in the long run. Digital detoxes, which are in the most basic terms, deliberate breaks from non-essential technology in our lives, are a great example. Non-essential technology will differ from person to person, but it's anything that you do not need for work, school, or communication when it's necessary. Digital detoxes force you to reassess what you prioritize so you can take a step back from the distractions of everyday life. Digital detoxes can last for as long as you decide, but the idea is that you are using self-control to take your thoughts captive. The main point of a digital detox is to regain control of our attention, which can become scattered by all of the distractions of our lives. When we start small with things like this, then the hope is that we are able to take a bigger step back after time. When I was in elementary, I asked one of my coaches at T-Bar-M if she missed her phone during the week while she was working. My coach told me she missed it at first, but after a while, she became so focused on camp and being present that she didn't even think about her phone during the week. And everything she felt like she still had to do could wait until the weekend. Even though it did take time for her to lose the feeling of needing her phone, and my coach didn't have the choice of using it during the week like we do, she eventually came to a point of it not feeling like a necessity. But the only difference is that we have to use much more self-control since we use our phones every day for all kinds of things, and it makes it harder to slow down. So instead of throwing ourselves fully into throwing out distractions, we can start small and begin forming better habits. It's also important to keep in mind that there are all kinds of distractions in our lives other than just technology. Sometimes the biggest distractions in our lives are things we don't think are distracting us at all. But we as people tend to unknowingly hyperfixate on things like work, school, or other priorities. We lose sight of what's truly important in our lives. For me, I realize just how badly I lose sight of things when I am finally able to take a step back. For instance, last year, when I moved schools, I moved to be closer to my friends who had formed relationships with over the summer. But during that school year, I had to focus a lot on trying to keep my head above water and just doing well at a new school. And while I am still glad that I prioritized school so that I could experience things like the American history trip and being able to spend more time with friends this year, there was a lot that I missed out on and didn't realize about people. But if I had reversed my priorities and focused less on school, I would have ended up in a very different spot this year, probably not for the better. It made me realize that there are a lot of different aspects in my life where I have to take a step back, even if I can't see the whole picture, and think about what the right choice is, especially when it comes to certain distractions and my priorities. When I had to focus more on school, I struggled to keep my priorities straight, but I had people like my parents to keep me accountable. Having people in your life that you can ask questions and talk to is so incredibly important, regardless of how many times you've heard it. Having friends that will keep you accountable or talking to people that have more life experience than us is a great way to see our life from a different perspective, since they see us from an outside point of view and what roads we're headed down. One of the most convicting moments I've had about slowing down is when I worked at camp and we talked about true biblical rest. Biblical rest doesn't come from things like sleep or sitting down, but instead it comes from taking a moment to step back and find rest in God. Finding rest in God can mean a multitude of things. It can mean doing things like working out or doing a job that you love. And even though it doesn't seem like rest in a traditional sense, it just has to be something that's fulfilling that you find God in. Another way to rest is to truly appreciate quiet when it's given to us. A lot of times when people have a moment to themselves, they immediately turn on music or a show to run in the background while they're busy doing something else, and I'm frequently guilty of this. The issue with that is your mind stays at a high level of stimulation and can't actually rest when it's supposed to. The same thing happens when we fall asleep listening to music or spend time on different devices and then immediately go to sleep. Our minds have different states when we're awake, just like they do when we're sleeping. When you first wake up, your mind is in the theta stage, but immediately stimulating your brain by using your phone right after waking up pushes you into the beta stage faster than your mind's equipped to handle, which commonly leads to being stressed, scattered, or anxious. As seniors, we were required to take Human Society and Literature, and in that class, we read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It takes place in a futuristic dystopian society where no one truly thinks for themselves. There's constant distraction, and there's always something running in the background that keeps everyone in a state of acceptance of the way that they live. There's a moment where the main character is breaking free from this lifestyle and beginning to think for himself. He takes a girl he knows from work in a helicopter to see the ocean, and he turns off the music that was previously playing. For the first time in her life, this girl has silence, and she is left alone with her thoughts. She almost immediately descends into a sort of panic because of the constant state of distraction she's kept herself in up until this point. But the scary part of this is how similarly we live to these characters. We live in a constant sense of hurry and move from one thing to the next so fast that we can't focus on what we're on for more than a few minutes because of how normalized it is to always have some form of distraction at all times. We have made it so difficult for ourselves to live a slow life. So what does a slow life look like? In The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, it talks a lot about this same thing. A slow life is truly a choice that we have to make. So instead of looking at all the things we have to do and worrying, we have to look at everything and choose to take it step by step. We can't set unrealistic expectations for ourselves, so sometimes there will be moments when not everything gets done. But the key is to not let things pile up by resting and working in moderation. We are people that are sinful and anxious, but we are also God's creation that He made in His image. He made this world for us to enjoy. We have to slow down to truly appreciate it. A lot of the sense of hurry in our lives comes from comparison. We compare our work ethic to our peers, we compare our accomplishments with others, and we compare what we own to everyone else too. It's so easy not to take into account that everyone does life differently. Everyone works at a different pace. We all spend time working towards different things, and just because someone has more or less than you does not add or subtract from their value as a person. You don't have to have the same goals as anyone else to have a fulfilling life, but you have to focus on your growth instead of others. One of the biggest sources of comparison now is social media. It's so easy to look at other people's stories and posts and subconsciously compare ourselves to them. For part of my research, I interviewed Mr. McNeely, who's a pastor at Stonegate Fellowship, and he said that social media just isn't real in that sense. You only see a carefully curated snippet of someone's life that they've chosen to share with everyone. Not many people share their deepest, darkest secrets or their very worst days on a platform that lets everyone who wants to see how they're doing. Most people create a mask for themselves through social media so that you only see what they want you to. It seems like we could solve a lot of our problems by just getting rid of social media and limiting technology in our lives, but there's a chance that that could still do more harm than good. One of my favorite quotes from the Fellowship of the Rings is, "The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out." We can ignore all of the bad things in the world and live our lives completely distraction-free. But is that really beneficial to those around us? Once in a class, Mr. Westfall said, Christians should be the most interesting people, because how else are we supposed to connect with others? Some of the easiest ways to form a friendship are through common interest. So instead of locking the world out, we should strive to know things. By being well-read or well-versed in different movies or having seen the same random video as someone, it automatically gives you grounds for a conversation. Social media is one of the biggest distractions right now, but it's also one of our greatest assets. Though it can be harmful, it can be used as a tool, especially for Christians. There seems to be a stigma around social media in the church, where a significant amount of people feel it can only lead to bad. But social media can be a great platform to share the gospel and show others the love of Christ, which is why we should be very aware of what we like, post, and comment, because that could be the only interaction we have with someone. And we have to think, is this impression of us really going to harm that person, or is it going to impact them positively and plant a seed for Christ's love to grow through them? The idea remains that we were made to live a slow life, and it is up to us whether or not we do that. There's a lot of focus on media and always knowing the next thing, but if you really look at it, it depends on what your priorities are. We have all the information we could ever want at our fingertips, and it takes a lot of the real learning out of our daily lives because of how easy it is to access. So it's important for us to willfully slow down and think about what we are consuming so that we can actively take our thoughts captive. It's not easy, and it takes a conscious effort every day, as well as learning to be okay with being bored. Learning to slow down can teach us some of our greatest strengths and point out our greatest areas for growth, which is why it is so important to strive for a slow life. Thank you.
Bailey, that was so good. Beautiful job. Okay, so first question, what are you going to do in the fall?
I'm going to attend Lubbock Christian University, and I'm going to major in early childhood education.
Nice. Okay, so this is your second year at MCA, and so I'm just curious about just a few of your favorite things. So what's been your favorite class that you've taken at MCA?
Okay, so I've really loved Tolkien Lit this year, but looking at my actual favorite, even though I kind of hated it in the moment, I really loved rhetoric, because public speaking is just not my thing, but that was one of the most fun classes I've ever been in.
Wow. And you did such a great job. So, okay, your favorite spot on campus?
The seniors like to spend a lot of time in walkways. We just kind of tend to do that, so just wherever everyone is.
That's good. Okay, what about your favorite just overall memory?
This year, so on the junior trip, me and Julia got matching sweatshirts in Philadelphia, and they're blue and they say Philly. And then we realized the next day that Mr. Westfall has the same one. So at one point during Tolkien Lit this year, we messaged him and we were like, hey, can you maybe wear that tomorrow? So we all matched sweatshirts, and it was really fun.
That's awesome. I love a good matching.
It was fun.
Okay, so what drew you into this topic?
After working at camp, I had a lot of campers who they watch a lot of YouTube shorts, or they just have a lot of screen time. And they all had a very different outlook than the kids that didn't have a ton of screen time. And so I was originally going to do more of social media and technology and how it affects kids' ability to learn. But I realized that that's something that everyone struggles with. But kids and teens are the most susceptible to it just because it affects the way you develop. So.
Interesting. And so what kind of led you to think more about you, as in you taking this topic and thinking about the distractions that you have versus what a child has?
So it was the same kid that she had a lot of screen time. She had a lot of very weird viewpoints on things, and she was 7 years old, so it was just odd. But then she kind of humbled me because she was like, well, don't you play on Instagram and stuff? And I was like, maybe. So I realized that I have a lot of things where that does end up taking a lot of my time. So there's a lot of areas that I can step back and be like, oh, I need to stop that. So just stuff like that.
That's good. Okay, so last week during our senior meeting, we talked about just distraction and living a slow life and how it's Friday and it's 11 o'clock and this week has been a lot, right? And so we talked about just how are ways that you can slow down this week. And would you just share with us what are some ways in which you slowed down this week?
I think at the beginning, I was really set on I'm going to go to everybody's thesis. I'm going to be so supportive. I'm going to be a great friend. But I just could not do that mentally. And so, yesterday, me and Lila, I can't remember whose thesis we missed, but we went to 12 Gate and we worked on our thesis for a minute. And it was really nice to be okay, this is going to be our time away from that one. We're just going to go have coffee and we're going to take a break.
Yeah. Do you remember your answer last week?
I think I said that, just still spend time with my family, intentionally. Mm-hmm. And so I got to do that too, but it was harder because they have activities and whatnot in the evenings.
Yes. Can I share with your family? She specifically was saying that she was going to try and watch maybe some movies or TV shows with her sisters. So it was sweet.
We watched a lot of Dance Moms this week.
Oh, good. That's good. Restful.
That was not my choice. I'd like to add that.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so in Bible study 2 weeks ago, you talked about this in our Bible study this year, or for the past few weeks. We've decided to kind of take a step back and talk about certain topics and just have an open discussion, an open conversation about what these topics mean to us. And so specifically, Bailey got to talk about resting. And something that you brought up was just the introverted rest versus the extroverted rest. And so could you just define that for us? And
yes. So when I interviewed Mr. McNeely for my thesis, he talked a lot about I asked him what's a good way to find rest that's outside of sitting down and reading or playing on your phone. And he's there's a lot of rest in relationships. But it made me think about there's a point when I was super introverted. I'm really not as introverted now, but it just drained me to be around people. And it could be the most fun thing ever, but my social battery was just gone. So I needed time to just be kind of by myself, and I needed to not be on my phone. So like extroverted rest, you can kind of get a lot of rest from being in relationships and just being around people and having time to like talk to them intentionally, just things like that.
That's good. So do you think that we need to do both? Or, yeah.
I think that there's a lot of beauty in both, because you kind of have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, which like I am more extroverted now, but that was not a product of me sitting in my house and resting all by myself all the time. Like I had to push myself out of my comfort zone, and now I find more rest in being around people, whether that's like my sisters or my friends or just going to get coffee with someone. But I think, and also extroverts have to like take a time by themselves, because there's a lot of beauty in like being able to think of your own thoughts and forming your own ideas and opinions instead of just hearing everyone else's all the time. So I think there's a lot of beauty in both.
Yes. And how rest, though we may think of it as something that's automatically like comfort, sometimes finding rest in something that's uncomfortable is actually stretching that idea of rest. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the stages of waking up and going to sleep and how they're similar to each other. And so could you just elaborate a little bit more on what those stages are and how they're similar to each other?
Yes. Okay, so like when you're sleeping, I cannot think of the names right now, but there's the different stages of like deep sleep or slightly less deep sleep, but that's the one that you dream in.
REM?
And yes, wait. Oh my gosh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, but you have very similar stages when you're awake. So like if you wake up and immediately like expose yourself to blue light, then it pushes you into the second stage. I think I said it was the theta stage faster. And the same thing happens when you're going to sleep. Like you have to kind of progressively slow down. So going from like being super stimulated and then like, okay, it's time to go to sleep now, your brain is not a fan of that. But one of the best ways to combat that is like we did it in Bible study, where it's like wait 30 minutes after you wake up to get on your phone. I think the recommended time is around an hour, but like you have to build habits. It doesn't just start overnight. Things like that.
Yeah. And so why do you think it's so easy for us to reach for our phones the first thing when we get up in the morning or last thing when we go to bed?
I think it's just kind of a habit. Like it makes you feel more connected, because I have a friend that lives in Houston, so I don't see her that often, but I get to see her Instagram stories and I see like how she's doing and what she's been up to. So it makes me feel more connected with people like that. But I think it just becomes a habit of like, oh, I grab that every morning. I just kind of keep doing that. Like it's the same as brushing your teeth. You do that every morning, whether you kind of want to or not. You just go over and you brush your teeth because that's part of your routine.
Yes, yeah. And that habit kind of can lead into a sort of distraction, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I guess why do you think that is?
I have a quote here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Okay. So social media, it kind of like the whole big dopamine thing. This is a quote by a doctor, and she's a director of behavioral health at a hospital. But she says, social media platforms drive surges of dopamine into the brain to keep consumers coming back over and over. The shares, likes, and comments on these platforms trigger the brain's reward center, resulting in a high similar to the one people feel when gambling or using drugs. So it's very much like it can just become an addiction almost, just because of like that tiny little response in your brain. It just builds up over time.
Yeah. That habit becomes an addiction. That's so good. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, and it has to do with just biblical rest. And so throughout Jesus' ministry here on earth, did he ever call out the disciples for being distracted?
Yes, I think we talked about this when we were planning for Bible study. But even in like the garden in Gethsemane before he died, he was like, we're going to use this time intentionally. We're going to pray. I'm going to go off and pray. And he was like, stay awake, but we're going to sit here and we're going to be silent. And they had a really hard time staying awake. And he came back and he got onto them. He was like, guys, come on now. But like, there's a lot of different moments where you just kind of get humbled by your own life, where it's like, oh, I need to stop right now.
Yes, that's so good. Okay, I'm going to pass the mic.
I really love this topic, Bailey. And so you start off talking about the Renaissance, and what does Renaissance mean?
Okay, I had the definition at some point, but I think I forgot to write it down. But it's like, it means rebirth almost.
Right. That's kind of where I was going with this.
Yes.
And so we have this rebirth of art and knowledge and developing of technology. And so here at MCA we talk a lot about pursuing truth and beauty, goodness. And so can we reflect we're God's created beings, and we're created to reflect His glory, who He is. Can we do that if we aren't in pursuit of these things?
I think that you can get a very worldly beauty from, like, if you're not pursuing Christ, but you're still pursuing, like, art and things like that. You get a very worldly beauty, but I think there's a different kind of fulfillment that comes from pursuing Christ in that. And, like, I think the reason the Renaissance became the point when people fell so far away is because they were so wrapped up in the worldly beauty, and it became progress for the sake of progress, and not, like, they lost the why behind what they were doing.
Okay, that's a very good response. And can you, can we actually create art, or can we actually contemplate truth without slowing down?
I think you can try, but I think that, not that it's easiest when you slow down, but that's when it's the most clear. Because, like, if you're running, everything beside you is just kind of blurry, and, like, it's just blobs of colors. But when you stop or you're walking, you can kind of see it for what it is. So just being able to see clarity and slowing down.
Okay, yes. And and when you talked about with more art and media available to us, the more stimulation our minds go through. And I kind of think of art and media as separate things. Are they?
I think so, just because I feel like art is more intentional. But, like, I think there's also still an art in, like, creating a great movie or writing a song. So there's still art in these things, but I think that media is more just like what you're consuming when, like, you're tired or you're just not really thinking about the meaning or the why behind it.
Okay, very good. And so how do we know we're being distracted from the right pursuit of art and the right pursuit of knowledge?
I think that it's just a really personal thing. Like, it's very much just what's in your heart. Because you can have distractions, but you can also have outlets. Like, you have to have an outlet for a lot of your feelings that you can't, like, articulate to people. So I think it's just being very aware of, like, okay, like the why behind it that I talked about earlier. Like, what am I doing this for? Is this a distraction from, like, all of the crazy things in my life? Or is this a way for me to, like, channel those things into one thing?
Excellent. And then, okay, so one thing that you brought up that I was very interested in, because I haven't read Brave New World.
Yes.
So I was curious about it, and so I just went back. I Googled just the author Huxley and when he wrote it, and so it said it was written in 1931-32, and so it was written. So he had observed the Industrial Revolution, World War I, and so all of these technologies are developed during World War I, and then after World War I you have the Great Boom, 1920, and then it all comes crashing down. And so it just seems like that's always seems to be. I mean, you talked about the Renaissance, and then this. It seems like as human beings we can't. Throughout history, it just seems to be this cycle. And so, so as Christians, how do we, like, eventually we can't keep going as we're going. There's going to be a crash of some sort. So as Christians, what are our response to that? Do we sound an alarm? Do we just go about our business like Noah did? What do we do?
I think that like the results of the crash is because people weren't aware enough of like, when you go too hard or too fast at something, then it will end in a crash. Like, that's why rest is so important, because you'll burn yourself out if you don't take the time to rest. But I think if or when the crash does happen, you just kind of have to like slow down and most likely pray about it and just think of like, okay, what would Jesus do? What does God want me to do? What's the right response here? And it's just going to depend on the situation, I guess.
Okay. And so a couple of passages that I love and that I'm always throwing out at mainly at myself, but at other is, so Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." And then I came across this verse in Isaiah, and "For thus said the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. But you were unwilling." So we know all of this. Why are we so unwilling to be quiet, to rest?
I think that the culture we live in, like, it's very normal to be like a workaholic or put all your time into work or school or just trying really hard at your activity. And I think that there is a lot of value in hard work and like just giving your whole self to that, but it can't be unceasing work. And when you do just kind of like live a very go, go, go lifestyle all the time, you start to think that you're in control of your life. And I think that when you do feel in control, that's what leads to that crash that we were talking about. And that's really the moment that it's like, okay, I'm not in charge of this. So I think the crash can be a very necessary thing. Okay. And that's why people are so unwilling.
Excellent. Okay, and then let's talk about, so then Paul tells us, so we say love God and love others a lot in the church. And so Paul defines love for us. He says love is what?
Like the love is patient, love is kind.
Love is kind, love is patient. And so if we don't stop and rest, and we have, what does it usually look like when we are, when we have too much to do?
One thing that we talked about at camp was you can't pour from an empty cup. And so if you do burn yourself out and you're just like trying to pour into people all the time, but you're not taking the time to slow down and let others pour into you, you cannot help them. And it gets to the point of like trying so hard to help them that you can hurt yourself and them.
Exactly. So if we don't have peace and patience, and can we achieve those things without stopping and resting?
I don't think so. I think that you can try, but it's not from you, it's from God. And like you have to have Christ's love poured into you to be able to pour it out to others.
So would you say we can't truly love God and love others if we don't find time to rest?
Yes, I think that the rest is like one of the most important things, because like I've got to find the definition of it. It's somewhere. Maybe. But there's a Jewish practice where you plant for 6 years and then you rest on the 7th.
Yeah, okay.
And on the next year when you do plant again, then your harvest is more bountiful and it's more plentiful. So like they work tirelessly for 6 years, but there has to be that period of rest, or like the farmer's going to get overworked. His workers, his livestock, everything will just get burnt out eventually, and it won't work without rest.
Exactly. Thank you, Bailey, for just making us aware of this essential part of our faith.
Getting close. Good job.
Thank you.
Oh, hold up. Sorry, that was important. I had to reply. I guess I just want you to know, just like that little camper who pointed out that you have your own version of dopamine addiction. Hers was Roblox or whatever, and yours is Instagram. We as adults have it too. And so, I mean, probably the people in this room, I mean, how many of y'all have felt distracted during this 30 minutes so far? Anybody? I guess just me. So I guess I'm curious to know, in your journey here, like, what are some practical things that you've gained that have helped you? Because I want to learn from your experience and try to pick up some of those practices myself.
Okay, so near the beginning of like all of my research and stuff, Nalani convinced me that I needed TikTok. And I was like, oh, this feels hypocritical. But I set a timer on it where I can only be on it for 10 minutes, and then I can either ignore it, or I can set it to remind me again in 10 minutes, or I can get off of the app. And so it was very much like I wanted to keep scrolling, but I had to take my thoughts captive and use a lot of self-control and be like, okay, it's time that we're gonna close this. We're gonna be done. So just like setting boundaries.
That's good. Do other people know about those boundaries, or is it mostly like an internal decision that you make? Do you involve other people in that conversation?
That one was very internal, but I think having people to hold you accountable are really important, because I got to a point where I was just not doing it. Like, I would ignore the little limit thing. And so I think I told probably Nani, and I was like, hey, can you remind me, like, if I start sending you TikToks for like 20 minutes in a row, can you just tell me to stop? But
then that might make Nolani realize, well, she's also been on it for 20 minutes. And so that might be too convicting to bring other people in. Speaking of which, do you think, just like are you becoming more aware of not only your struggles with this, but like when you walk into a restaurant or whatever, do you just see it now in a different way than you haven't had prior to this?
I definitely felt that way, especially after I read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. But I definitely don't want to be one of the people that's like, oh my gosh, you need to fix that. But I could just kind of feel it. I was like, oh, I wonder if I can help them somehow. But there's also like limits that you have to set where you're not overstepping it and like scaring them away. But being like, hey, this has really helped in my life. And like, it just started with tiny little habits, and then it kind of builds up to more and more. And like, my screen time's not super high anymore, but I don't have to tell someone like, hey, your screen time's 8 hours and it needs to not be. Like.
That's deep. I like that. That was kind of one of my follow-up questions, is how do you do this without being judgy toward other people as you found something that has worked for you? But that's good. Just you follow the Spirit's lead and wait for it to come up in conversation, and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so just a couple other things. I really liked this Tolkien quote. I didn't remember it. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. Elaborate on that for us just one more time, how that fits into your thesis.
Okay, so in Tolkien Lit, we did blogs each week, and I was really, really excited because the week I was supposed to do a blog lined up with this quote. And so it's kind of like you can live in a bubble, and MCA, in a sense, is a bubble, just because, like, Midland, Texas is kind of sheltered from a lot of things. And if you're never on social media or you never read the news, then you're kind of locking everything out. And that's just kind of harmful to yourself, because I think there is, like, ignorance is bliss, but it's important to know things and like, hey, this is the state of the world, and like, see how God works through that in other people's lives, like whether it's on a large scale or a small scale. But keeping yourself in your tiny little bubble is not a healthy practice.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I figured that was inspiring to a lot of people in the audience to think, okay, if I can say that I'm on Instagram or TikTok to become culturally relevant so I can reach out to people, when your dad or mom ask you, you can be like, I'm doing gospel research there, Mom. So
this is important.
This is important, yes. I must reach people for Christ, so that's good. You brought it up earlier you said when you are running, the flowers are blurry when you run past. I guess that means you run faster than I do, because they're not blurry when I am running.
Maybe when we're driving,
okay.
And then it's blurry.
Yeah. Have you, the thing that certainly made me think of, it's something that we read before you got here. Have you read Fahrenheit 451?
I have not, but
Okay.
I've been meaning to.
It's a fan favorite. I saw a lot of knowing nods when you brought that up. But the main character, Clarice, one of the main characters, she basically became an outsider because she basically stopped and walked everywhere and noticed things that other people didn't because they were all distracted. And so, what are some things that you're noticing as you've kind of learned prior to when you were, I guess, as you've been practicing this?
I think so. I have tried really hard to stay off of social media just because that's where I kind of find my little dopamine addiction leading towards. But it's been odd when I'm like, okay, we're not going to get on Instagram today, or I'm not going to get on it during this period of time. We'll go get coffee or something. And then I just kind of feel awkward. I've had to start bringing a book with me everywhere because I'm the only, that sounds judgy. There will be, sorry, there's moments where people get on their phones, and even if it's to look something up, I just feel awkward because I'm like, oh, I'm not touching my phone right now, and I kind of feel like I should be. So it's just there has to be some other thing where it's it's going to be okay to be different in some senses like that.
That's good. I like that. Okay, so kind of last question that you brought up earlier, and I thought it was interesting, but you said early childhood education. What are you hoping to do with that?
I've really loved getting to work at camp, and I teach a Sunday school class, and I've always wanted to be a teacher just because I've had a lot of really great teachers pour into me, and that's very much formed who I am now. But I feel like early childhood education is very much just kind of the group I click with. I have a much easier time pouring into younger kids than I do into older kids. And so I just want to be able to pour into kids. And I don't remember specific instances where my second teacher was super kind to me, but I know that there were moments where it's oh, I want to be like that when I'm older. So I just want to be able to pour into kids like that.
So you're a teacher of second grade 10 years from now. What do you expect kind of the typical second grader to be with all of their dopamine addictions, that have advanced as the world advances within the next 10 years?
I don't know, but I'm a little scared because there's kids, even in my Sunday school class, that I don't know if it's they can't or they won't, but they do not make eye contact. They'll just stare at their paper, or they'll be talking to me, but they're looking kind of over my shoulder. And I know that is a side effect of just having a lot of screen time, especially when you're young, because that affects that part of development. But I feel like there will be a lot of weird little quirks like that, but kids are still kids regardless of how much time they have on a screen. We obviously have a lot more than kids 100 years ago did, but if you read books about kids from any time period, there's always a lot of defining traits that are very similar.
That's good. All right, and this is actually my last question about, you said dance moms?
Yes.
Is that a whole family affair? Does Dad participate also?
Only occasionally, but he's like, oh my gosh, this is hard to watch. That's it.
Much respect to a girl dad for participating in the things that interest your girls.
Okay, I just want to ask, is this on? Oh, yes. Ask a few more questions specifically about the ruthless elimination of hurry, just because we read this book together, and John Mark Comer, it's an interesting way that he writes, because he has a lot of different ideas, and then he includes a lot of different resources, and then it all jumbles. It's like a jumbled mess, but it somehow makes sense. So something that John Mark brings up is that love is patient, love is kind. And whenever Miss Miller brought this up, something that he says describes what love is that hurry and love are like oil and water. They do not mix. And then he goes on and he says that there's a reason why people talk about walking with God instead of running with God, and it's because God is love. And then he goes in and puts in talks about a different resource, and it's this book. It's called The 3 Mile an Hour God, and it's written by this late Japanese theologian, and it says that God walks slowly because he is love, if he is not love, he would have gone much faster. Love has its speed. It's an inner speed. It's a spiritual speed. It is different. It's a different kind of speed from technological speed to which we are accustomed. It is slow, yet it is the Lord over all other speeds, since it's the speed of love. And so just that quote was one that really stuck with me, and it's in chapter 1, so it was like all the way back in October when we read it. But it's just something, just thinking about your oral, that just kind of came up, and I was like, man, I really want to share this with Bailey, because I really want just to know what you think, or how would you define like the speed of love?
I mean, like even that first verse when it's love is patient, patience and hurry do not go together. You can't be patient and like be scattered and like trying to do everything at once. So being able to slow down and like truly put time and effort into people, because it's hard to put effort in when you're like just going as fast as you can all the time. So I think that a lot of love is like that, when you have to truly slow down so that you can pour into people.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. 2 more questions, and then it's your turn, I promise. Wait, also, how are you feeling? 3 more questions. How are you feeling?
I feel a lot better now. This is much less stressful than I thought it'd be.
Good. Okay, why do you think the word slow has a negative connotation? Because whenever we think about slow, we're like, oh, that person's a slow runner. Why do you think that is?
I think just because like we focus a lot on progress, and so everyone wants to do the next thing and they want to achieve all of their goals. But being able, like comparison, where not everyone runs at the same speed, but you can all walk the same speed, even if like you have to forcefully slow down so that you're walking the same as like that little kid whose legs are significantly shorter than you. Yeah. So everyone can walk at the same speed, but everyone wants to be running. Mm-hmm. So it's harder to slow down than it is to just go.
Yeah. So how would you define slow?
I think living a slow life, like you can be a busybody and always have to be kind of doing something, but being able to slow down, I think it just means having enough time set aside, like even if you have to intentionally carve out that time to pour into other people, and just be very intentional.
Yeah, that's good. Oh man, I have one more. Can I ask one more question? Okay. Yes, I'm going to ask one more question. Okay, so what is something that you're fast at and something that you're slow at?
Okay, so I really like to crochet, and I also just learned how to knit. And I'm really, really slow at knitting, but I'm really fast at crocheting. But there's like just kind of a different art to both. And so kind of being able to apply that to life is very strange. But like I'm a lot faster at being able to like just stop and not speak a lot. But when we're at Bible study and someone asks a question that we all have to do, it takes me a hot minute to think of like what to say, just because I'm not a verbal processor. Like I have to have it kind of written down in front of me to be able to do it well.
Yes. And there's good in both. Good in having the ability to do something really fast, but also having the ability to do something really slow. And so, yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Oh, also, Bailey, I've just really enjoyed our senior meetings, and I think that it's probably one of my favorite hours at work every week. And so I just wanted to tell you that, because it's just a time where we get to talk about slowing down, and my goodness, I need that on Wednesdays. So it's just been awesome. So now you can ask us questions.
Okay. So, Miss Martiz, if you were on Dancing with the Stars, who would your dream partner be? And it can be a pro or it can be a celebrity. And then, Ms. Miller, have you ever heard of like the Roman Empire joke? Where it's like boys' Roman empires that they think of the Roman Empire like 12 times a week and for no good reason. So, like I said, my Roman Empire is Princess Diana because I think of her an absurd amount. I don't know why. So what is your Roman Empire? Like what's just something you think of an absurd amount that doesn't relate to things? And then, Mr. Priya, what is your very favorite or funniest memory from either the astronomy trip or junior trip?
Okay, my answer is pretty easy. The pro that I would choose is Val, because then we'd be Val and Val.
Yes.
And that's perfect.
I feel like you've given me the hardest question. I really have no idea. I mean, I know there's a lot of random things I think about.
What's your favorite one?
Yes, definitely my grandbaby. I have got so bad at, when there's a downtime, grabbing my phone and just looking at pictures of my grandbaby.
Oh.
It is getting
seems like
it
a
is
good
getting
Roman
ridiculous, and he may be becoming an idol. So, thanks for
Now you
bringing
get
that
to
up.
slow down and not make him an idol.
I think I had the hardest question because I data dump my memories, and so I don't actually remember that much about the astronomy trip or junior trip. But if I were going to remember something special about all those punks behind you that went to both of those places with me, I actually do have pretty fond memories of being in New York. I love being in a big city always, but especially when I have people who are experiencing it for the first time with me, and just watching my little group power walking down the street, outpacing all the other groups because we were the fastest. Were you in my group? Yeah.
I don't know.
I wasn't in my group very much, actually, so I was off doing my own
You
thing.
just
Kay
kind
gave
of,
me a hard time
you would
about that.
disappear and
I would just disappear and reappear.
at random
right?
times. Like we were all getting ice cream and you were just there.
Yeah, I would just show up, right? So.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it's just so fun to see the world with you guys and with students, and I guess that's a good illustration of this is going in New York. It's actually pretty hard to go slow, right? Because it's like everybody around you is walking at a certain pace that if you don't do that, you'll get run over. And so there is something very deliberate and important about practicing this thing, about slowing down, even if what it feels like is in order to keep up, you have to do what everybody else around you is doing. But I do like that concept that love is slow and that God is slow and that he operates on a different timeline than we tend to. So, and I am really glad that I was going to ask you a question about this earlier, but that you decided to buckle down and do what it took to get to come on the American history trip, because I think that's just a really fun, meaningful way to build relationships with your friends and your classmates. And I'm just really glad that you're here and that you decided to make the jump last year, because that's a big leap of faith.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'll close this in prayer. We'll be done. God, thank you so much for this day and for Bailey and for the work that you're doing in her life and the message that you've given her that's just so pertinent for today. May we find ways to implement these ideas, to practice Sabbath, to let things go, to not worry about missing out, but also to figure out how to also stay tied into what's happening in the world, so we can love people as you love. Go with Bailey in this next season of her life. We know you have good things in store for her. We pray all this in Christ's name. Amen.